Hello. Welcome. This is Myofascial Release and Restore. My name's Kim. The props we're going to use today, really the only thing that you need is a tennis ball or some kind of like rubber ball, like a trigger point ball or like a more specifically designed tool. I got a little rubber ball. Tennis ball works great though. I've also got a blanket and a bolster. Any blanket or pillow will do. These will just make the restorative postures a little bit more comfortable. So if you want to go ahead and get settled, grab your props. I'll go ahead and get started in just about a minute. Water, also, great thing to have. If you've never done myofascial release before, or self-myofascial release, it's awesome. It's one of my favorite classes to teach because it's so accessible and I think immediately feels really productive. I think we're going to go ahead and start. So I want to start with just a little bit of movement here to feel into the body. Maybe notice anything that is just calling to your attention before we get into the practice. Go ahead and start in a tabletop position, fingertips spread comfortably wide, long spine. We're just going to do a few cat-cows here. Inhale, heart forward, tailbone high. Exhale, round your spine, tuck your chin. Inhale, tailbone lifts, heart forward. Exhale, round your spine. Let's do this a few more times at your own pace. It doesn't have to be super vigorous. Just feeling into your body. So that means any other movements that you like are great here. I love these barrel rolls to feel into side bodies. Make sure you're doing both directions if you're doing something asymmetrical. And then bringing spine back to neutral-ish position when you feel ready. One leg lengthens behind you, or just feeling it out here. So you can keep the toes on the ground. You might press back into the heel a few times. It might feel good to lift the leg and even open the hip. Maybe take a couple circles. And then we'll move into the other side. Other leg stretches out, pulsing into the heel a few times. Maybe shaking that leg out. You can actually shake or make slow, gentle movements, opening the hips. This is your practice. Make the movements that call to you. And when you're ready, both knees come back onto the ground. Stretch it back for a brief child's pose. You can keep knees together or bring them apart. Forehead on the ground or hovering off, just to find some length through the spine. And then walk it up. We're going to get into our first myofascial release movement. This one I really like because it's super accessible and really, if you've done one myofascial release thing in your life for yourself, it's probably this. We're going to roll out the feet. I usually like to do this one standing up, but because of space restrictions, you won't be able to see the top of my head. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop right onto this little crate. So you can do this seated, you can do this standing. If you are standing and you want it to be a little bit less high maintenance, near a wall with your hand out on that wall is perfect. Go ahead and place your tennis ball just underneath the center of the ball of your foot, either one. We're going to take these movements nice and slow. So first, just going straight out, right down the center of the foot. and then straight back in again, just down the center of the foot. Do that one more time, straight out and straight back in. And notice you really have a lot of control here over how much pressure you feel. So if you want more, you could put more weight into that foot. If you're sitting, by kind of like leaning or pressing into it. If you're standing, it's a little more obvious how you do that. Now rotate your foot in. So we're just going to work up and down through the inner foot and arch. Going all the way out. And all the way in. So these first movements, we're going to do that again, are really just to explore. You'll have some time here to go back to any spots that you feel need some extra love. Once you've done that movement twice, you can readjust. We're moving to the outer foot. If you're standing, this is the one that I slip the most often in, so just make sure you're careful of that. We're going to just put some pressure there, move all the way out. And all the way back in. Do that one more time. I'm moving nice and slow because this is yoga. You don't want to miss anything. You also want to stay really mindful, moving intentionally, not just kind of getting this over with. And then as promised, this is your time. You've got a minute or two here just to find and feel into any spaces that needed a little extra attention. So for me, a lot of times that's the arch, or maybe the center of the ball of the foot. You might have found a spot that surprised you, that needs a little bit of extra attention. If you didn't and you're like, nah, my feet are good, you can just keep making those movements straight out, straight in on the center of the foot, inner foot, and outer foot. Breathing deeply into the spot that you're applying pressure to. You can imagine that spot melting like butter over that tennis ball. If you do hit a spot that's too intense, and you'll know it's too intense because you like make a face or breathe in sharply or can't take a deep breath, find a way to back off. So that would just be shifting your weight over to the other foot, or if you're seated, shifting your weight back away from the foot that you're rolling out. We've just got a couple more moments here. Take another deep breath or two. If you like to, you can finish with that just center, out, and in. And then kick that ball somewhere not too far away, but we're not going to go straight into the other side. Take a moment, let your whatever foot you just rolled be, I like to close my eyes here. This is just a moment to check in, to feel into any of the work that you just did. Sometimes I notice a really big difference between my two sides, so the side I just rolled and the side I haven't done yet. Sometimes I don't really feel much of anything here. We're just trying to check in, not make it something it's not. Just let this moment be. When you're ready to move on to the other side, getting yourself settled, seated or standing, just putting the ball under the other foot. I'm going to start right in the center of the ball of the foot. And roll slowly out and slowly back in. I'm going to do that twice. And the reason I really like these exploratory movements is because I get surprised all the time by something I didn't know was there. Sometimes I think I have a sore spot somewhere in my body, and I roll there and it's great. Sometimes it doesn't really help long term. So we really want to look for, like, see what we find. We want to see what we find here. Once you've done that a couple of times, we're going to go to the inner foot. So same as other side, no trigger. Slowly out. And slowly back in. And then once you finish that movement, we're going to roll to the outside of the foot. Just apply pressure twice, out and in. The myofascial network connects everything throughout your entire body. My favorite way I see this represented is, if you take out your shirt and there's something like a tightness here, and you twist that, there's that tightness. And once you finish those movements, go ahead and find any movement you like. So I've got something going on here. I might be feeling it out here where this wrinkle ends, or out here where this wrinkle ends, or back here somewhere. And if I only roll into those spots, that might bring some temporary relief. But if I'm searching, then maybe I'll find this spot that's really causing the pain or the discomfort. So really taking time to explore, to find what's going on, having an open mind about what might be there. You can continue to move here, rolling out and in, or just find a spot to pin and hold. That's what that technique is called. When we just hold and apply pressure, it's called pinning. Do this for a few more breaths. Remember, adjust your weight as you need to, more or less. Last breath here. And when you're ready, just move that ball out of the way, plant your foot back on the ground, feet planted evenly, and take a couple breaths. Feel into any shift in energy, any shift in sensation that occurred. I'm going to go ahead and move into our first restorative pose, so you can come back down to your mat. I have, like I said, I've got some of my props here, a pillow and a blanket. I'm going to offer ways to do this with and without. This pose is caterpillar pose, so really simple. We're just going to fold forward, legs long, and fold and relax. This isn't always relaxing. It's hard to relax in a stretch for a few minutes. So we've got a couple ways that we can make this feel a little bit better. My favorite is to bend my knees. So knees bend, maybe arms reach under, or maybe fingertips just hover above the ground. Being mindful to lengthen low back rather than rocking back into it. So a lot of times we sit like this when the hamstrings are super tight. That's where bending your knees can help. So if you're trying to find that alignment for the first time, I like to bend my knees and then pull my heels in towards my sit bones, pull my sit bones towards my heels. And then with a long low back, lengthen over the legs. If you've got your props, I like to just use a folded blanket or a pillow to go under my knees and keep that bend for me. Another great thing to do is use the pillow or a folded blanket at your hip crease and fold over it, or even a little further out to rest your head. I'm really biased, so I hate holding up my own head in restorative yoga. It's too hard. So set yourself up here. We're going to be here for a few minutes. I'll keep an eye on the live feed, make sure that I haven't left you so that you can just relax. I'll keep track of time and I'll let you know when to come out. this restorative yoga can be such a challenging practice. My first experience with restorative style yoga was walking to a yoga studio and like panicking about just sitting in quiet and being alone with my thoughts. So if that panic starts to creep in, or just a general like anxiety, maybe it's not as bad for you, maybe it's not panicking, but if you start to feel a little bit anxious or just like you want to move or you're sick of being still, take a deep breath. Remind yourself that this is not a permanent state. We're not going to be here forever. And just take it one breath at a time. If it helps, you're welcome to use a mantra. My favorite is I am breathing in. I am breathing out. You can repeat that silently to yourself with each breath. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. Serving as a reminder of what you are doing. A reminder that sometimes that is enough. And also a tool to anchor your mind to this moment. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. We've been here for a little while already. I said earlier, like resist the urge to move, resist the urge to come out. Stillness is beneficial. Stillness, especially mentally, just to know that you can get through it, to know that it's okay to quiet down is awesome. But if you're sitting here and you're like, man, my back hurts, don't force yourself to keep doing this. You can come out partway and just sit like this. You could also come out all the way. Lying down on your back is a great place to be if you're just not quite sure where to go. You're over this posture, it's not helping you. Lie down and do your breathing, mindfulness, mantra, whatever you're incorporating here, you can absolutely do from a supine position. If you're choosing to stay, we've got a couple more minutes. There is no rush to move. If you're feeling ready to come out, you can start to do so now. You could also take a few more breaths here. Just make sure you're making these transitions slowly. When you are ready to come out, just walking yourself up. And then I always like to give a little bit of time for you to move in any intuitive way that feels good. So after a forward fold with outstretched legs, it might be something like bending your knees in. It might be something like leaning back, maybe even taking a shoulder roll, lifting the chest. You could do something active, like lift the hips, or something more passive, like lying down on your back. So no wrong way to move here. You could do all of those things. You could do none of those things. Again, if you're just not sure, lie down for a couple of breaths. And just like we did after our self-myofascial release, notice any shift that has occurred. Shift in energy, shift in the body, shift in the mind. Our next myofascial release movement will be on our belly. So you can just roll right over. You could also sit up by rolling to the side and pressing yourself up. I really like a blanket, folded up blanket at the back of my mat for this. Pillow is also great. And I recommend just putting that down before you lie down on your belly, because it's super hard to get it under there once you're lying down. Really easy to kick it out of the way if you decide you don't like it. And before I lie down, this next myofascial release movement, we're going to be working through the inner thigh. That's a pretty big area of the body. You'll have some time to feel out what spots and spaces need a little bit more attention. So go ahead, make sure that tennis ball is handy, and lie down on your belly. And I've just got this folded blanket under my ankles to bring a little bit of softness to the ankle joint and also to the knee joint. If you decide you don't like that, kick it out of the way, no big deal. We're going to come into a half frog pose here, shifting weight to one side and then taking that opposite knee forward. So you'll notice that my hip is off the ground, my knee is on the ground. That's perfect. That's just what we want here, not applying too much pressure to the knee, especially right away. Well, never to the knee, but not making this too intense right away. Now you're going to take that round, your tennis ball, and just place it. I like to start mine nice and low. So if you can see it, just above the knee joint. And go ahead and feel it out. And this always gets a little bit awkward because you're on the ground, you're like putting pressure in this weird way and you're lying down awkwardly. But go ahead and feel it out. You might just take a moment to roll out and in, up and down, maybe in circles in that spot. And then you can move the tennis ball a little bit higher. And for me, because I don't have a ton of external rotation in my hip, this isn't feeling as intense. I can bring a little bit more weight by rolling it to the right, but at a certain point, I'm just not going to be able to feel the tennis ball anymore, and that's okay. I'll stick to the lower leg. Moving around a little in here, finding out what's going on, exploring this like very likely heavily used part of the body. Very important. If you've got the space, you can move that round up a little bit higher. And again, I'm just feeling it out here, right? If you're on a hardwood floor or something a little bit less forgiving than carpet, you can slide a blanket or some padding underneath your knee, your outstretched knee. It can be kind of nice. So now that you've felt out this space, you can bring that round back to any spot that needed a little extra attention. We're going to do that 3 times, pinning and holding for a few breaths. So for me, that spot is almost always just above my knee, but it's good to feel it out and check just in case something new has happened. You can rest your head on the ground. I'm going to keep my head up so I can be heard, but don't feel like you have to be like working here harder than you already are. Work to relax your face. Take a deep breath. See if you can feel some softness in the spot that's touching the tennis ball. Try to relax that muscle. And then go ahead and move to your second spot. So for me, that is going to be right next door. For you, it might be like the way other side of your inner thigh. If this is intense for you, take a little bit of pressure off by just rolling away from that knee. So now I'm lifting my hip a little bit higher to take pressure off and putting a little bit more weight to apply a little more pressure. Keep in mind that more intensity doesn't always mean more benefit. So we don't want to cause inflammation here. We don't want to do any damage to that soft tissue. If you can't take a deep breath, if you can't relax your face, find a way to make this less intense. Have one more breath here. And then find that last spot on this side. So again, right nearby or somewhere totally different. And then with your next breath, remove your tennis ball. Our next restorative posture is going to be this pose. This is half frog. You can just settle right in. You also might like to lengthen your leg out behind you. This is my preference, is just to lengthen out, come to neutral, take a breath. Maybe 2 breaths or 3 breaths. And then shifting out to the side again to bring knee out. Leg can be bent in or extended. Feel it out here, whatever feels nice to you. Head can be relaxed on the ground or a pillow. This practice really gives us the opportunity to feel into 2 sides of the same coin, right? We're trying to stay present, stay focused, stay in this moment. When we're doing that myofascial release work, the challenge for me is staying present in moments of intensity rather than checking out or trying to do it like harder and faster to get it over with. And then here in these moments in between where we're doing these restorative yoga postures, that challenge is not letting the mind wander elsewhere in moments of quiet. And it's a practice. Like it's not, if there's no expectation that you can just do that. It's hard. It's so hard. And it's never over. That work is never done. So you might just use this time and this space to become aware of any patterns that you're holding on to, any patterns in your thoughts or places in your body that you're feeling stuck. And when you do notice that the mind has wandered, no big deal. Just come back to this breath. Come back to this moment. Only got a few more breaths here. When you do feel ready to come out, make sure that you're rolling to get pressure off of that leg and lengthen behind you. Coming to an alligator pose momentarily, hands stack, forehead rests. And then you're going to stay right there while I turn to face the other side of my mat. This is always a moment for me that feels like whichever leg was just in that posture has grown like at least 2 or 3 inches. And then we'll move into the other side. So rolling to that side that you just worked, and then taking the other knee up. I'm trying to do too many things at once here. One step at a time. Take your knee up. Then go ahead and put your tennis ball just above the knee joint and feel it out here. So we're going to roll in and out. And that's just at whatever capacity you have here, whatever range of motion you have to do that. Rolling in and out. Then maybe taking some circles or a little bit of a zigzag to get up and down as well. That is like bringing to light some very interesting sensations in my body. And then go ahead and move that tennis ball up a little, and we'll do the same thing, pushing it out and in. Maybe some circles or maybe some zigzags. Try to stay interested in this, even if it is intense, interested in like what's going on in your body instead of like, oof, I hated that. Not gonna do that again. Maybe you reframe that as like, oh, that's an interesting sensation I wasn't expecting. What a fun surprise. And then if you want, you can move that round up one more time, working a little bit higher into the inner thigh. Now in a couple times, do a couple circles. And then when you feel ready, you can find that spot that needs a little more attention. And it doesn't always land perfectly. For me, this posture without the tennis ball is really comfortable. So I kind of just want to like get it right and then forget about it. But do make sure you take the time to get it in the right spot. You can rest your head down. Just going to keep my head up so I can make sure the video keeps working and not talking to the floor. And when you're ready, you can find that second spot. Maybe close by, maybe far away. Notice where you're holding tension in your body in a broader sense. Are you clenching your jaw? Are your shoulders shrugged up by your ears? Or are you like furrowing your brow? Are you curling your toes? Clenching your fists? Let those things go, and it will be a little easier to let go of the tension that you're holding in the specific spot that you're working. We're going to find one more spot here. Just to take a few final breaths in this myofascial release movement. When you feel ready, you can release out of this, either going straight into half frog on this side, or taking a moment in neutral to feel into any work you just did. And then when you're ready, that knee can come back out, head rests on the ground. And if it feels appropriate, you can melt that hip down a little bit closer to your mat. We've been here for a little bit now, which is why we're not holding this for 5 minutes on each side. If it's starting to feel like too much, just lift that hip up a little bit. You can even slide a folded blanket or a pillow under this hip for a little extra support. Notice if your mind has wandered away from this space. Notice everything about your next breath. As you feel ready, start to just roll away from that bent leg and lengthen it behind you, stacking forehead on the backs of your palms. We've been lying on our bellies for a while now. I find this to be a pretty big transition, so I want you to make it slowly. You might just walk your forearms in. You can press into forearms or palms if you want to bring palms flat to your mat. And just slowly roll up. Maybe start by pushing the hips back. If it feels good, you can walk the hips all the way back. So again, we've got about a minute for you to just move in any way that feels good. Maybe you push back into child's pose and that felt amazing. You can stay there. Any other movement is also welcome. Down dog, lying on your back, hugging the knees in. Forward fold. Our next myofascial release movement. I usually try to start with the most intense and then work my way down. This might be breaking my rule, but I think we're well prepped for it. So we're going to be working into the outer hips with this. I really like to use my blanket just for a little bit of padding to keep my wrists at less of an angle than on the ground. So I'm going to keep my blanket here. You can choose whether to do that or not. If you don't have a blanket but you want that extra padding, folding over your mat is a good way to give just a little bit of that incline. All right, so I'm going to cross one ankle over the other knee, and then this is just going to go right under the outer hip. So feel it out here. That's super important because for me, it's like a lot of, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but doesn't really feel like it's that productive. And then all of a sudden, yep, there it is. It's productive and also uncomfortable. Some ways to make this a little bit less. One, lifting your weight up. Now that makes it less on the hip, more on the arms. Another way to make it a little bit less is to bring your foot down. And then if you've been doing some kind of workout that really works that outer hip, you can actually feel this just rolling on the floor. I can feel this today without the tennis ball there. So you've got some options. See what works for you. We're not going to be here for super, super long, but when you do find that spot that you just need to stick it out, go ahead and hold for a few breaths. And this for me is one of the hardest to get that muscle to release. Like I can feel it right now, contracting and pushing against the tennis ball. So I'm going to just take a few breaths, relax neck and shoulders as much as possible. Relax face. And then maybe eventually you can start to feel that muscle melting around the tennis ball, giving way to the pressure. If you want to find a second spot, you can go ahead and do that for a couple breaths. If you're happy where you are, if you found that spot and you're good, stay there. That's great. Let's go for one more moment here. And then lifting off of that round, take your legs to some kind of neutral-ish position. Oof, I can definitely feel that. So like I said earlier, you might be feeling like, wow, a lot of relief or a lot of lingering sensation in that hip. You might be feeling nothing. There's not one that indicates that you did a better job or made more benefit if it feels more intense. Just taking a moment to be mindful, a moment to remind ourselves that this is a yoga practice. And then switch sides. And I'm going to go to the other side so that you guys can still see that tennis ball under my hip, but you don't have to keep switching back and forth. So I'm going to set my arms up behind me, ankle crosses over knee, and you can have legs close or a little bit further away. Tennis ball comes under the hip or not, depending on how tight you are here. And you're just going to roll around and feel this out. So I said outer hip. We're really looking to target that outer hip here because of The outer hip is a good target because of the way the legs are positioned, but it's not necessary. If you're not feeling much out there, if that's not what you need, then you can move more into the back of the hip, glutes. For me, this is what I need, so I'm going to stay right here. Once you've felt around a little bit and you find that place to pause, you can do that. And I said, this is like hard on your arms. This is a challenging position to hold yourself. So if you need a little break, you can actually come down and see I'm just rolling away from that round, so I'm not putting all my weight on it. Go ahead and find a second spot, maybe nearby. Just a few more breaths here. And when your mind starts like panicking, like, now I hate this, remember it's about to be over. Try to stay present, try to track that sensation. Like, go there instead of going somewhere else. And then when you're ready, coming off of that round, setting that to the side, and you can bend your knees or lengthen your legs out in front of you. Just take a moment, a couple deep breaths right here. And then our next restorative pose. This is another one. We're not going to hold it for 5 minutes on each side because it is like that's a little bit repetitive. So I really like to sit on a blanket. We're going to be doing this one seated. If you don't have a blanket, no big deal. It's nice to provide a little bit of softness to keep that alignment and also just to elevate the hips slightly. Crossing one leg over the other, I don't care which one, and then fold it forward. So again, you might be up here. Maybe you walk it a little bit deeper. If you've got a pillow or an extra blanket, you can rest your head. You can wiggle that in to your hip flexors. It's okay for this to feel like a mild stretch. You want it to feel productive. You want it to feel like you are doing something. But really with restorative yoga, the goal is to have the prop hold you up, to be able to fully relax, let gravity do its thing. So this isn't about going to your depth. Props, support, yay. Let's hold for about 1 more minute here. When you feel ready, go ahead and just walk yourself up. You can move any props out of the way. And just before you move your legs, like look down and notice which leg is in front. It's amazing how often I forget this, but I'm practicing a posture like this myself, so right leg is in front. After you've made a note of that, you can lengthen out your legs, maybe give it a little bit of a shake. And then go ahead and switch sides. So now my left leg is coming in front. Nice, tall spine. And fold it forward. Get yourself settled. Take the time to invite in your props. Usually we cross like one leg over the other all the time. So this might be a really interesting experience. Just like, what's it like to have my left leg in front? I know it's a little bit interesting for me. If the reason you cross one leg in front all the time is because of an injury or because like this is aggravating a sore spot on your body, just keep the same leg in front. Your legs are doing a really similar thing. You're taking a really similar action. So there's a lot of value in that, regardless of if you can make it perfectly even. Got just over a minute left here, almost there. As you feel ready, you can make your way slowly out of this. Our next pose is Shavasana, so if you want to just head straight there, lie down on your back, that's perfect. If you want to take any releasing movements from this, maybe shaking the legs out or hugging the knees in, that's also great. And as you're making your way to Shavasana, if you've got these like pillows and blankets, feel free to utilize them. I love folded blanket or a pillow under my knees. I'm a total knee locker, so I think that maybe that's where it comes from, but I love having just a little bit of softness in the knees. Taking up as much space as you like. I'm going to come up to seated in a moment, but go ahead and make all of your comfortable adjustments. If you get there and you're wishing you had something else, like that blanket's across the room, but it would be so nice, take the time to get it. We've still got some time here. We're not in a rush. So set this up in a way that is really productive, that feels really good, and just gives you that satisfying rest at the end of this yoga practice. I will call you out when it's time, so you can just be comfortable and relax. If you are comfortable and content where you are, please stay there. That's one of the best things about a home practice, is that this is truly, truly your space. Stay as long as you want and just ignore me. If you are ready to reawaken, just start with a deep breath. When it feels good, you can take gentle movements like rolling your head side to side, maybe wiggling fingertips and toes. Eventually, make your way into a fetal position, bending the knees and rolling to either side. You can use your arm as a pillow. Press up to seated at your own pace. You can keep your eyes closed or gaze soft. Hands come to heart space or anywhere that resonates with you. We're just going to take a few breaths here together to end. Starting with a full exhale. And deep belly breath through the nose. Sigh it out. Let's do that twice more. On this last one, letting go of every last ounce of tension that you don't need in your life. Exhale it out. Thank you so much for joining me in this virtual space. It's lovely to teach this practice again. Thank you. Namaste. Make sure you are checking Ascent's full schedule, tons of awesome classes starting this week and continuing out for a little while. Hopefully not too long, but we'll see how things shake out. Thank you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to comment and I'll be sure to check those. Have a good night.